This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to Canary Cast. On this week's pod, Norwich City have an FA Cup quarter-final draw with Manchester United to prepare for after a night to remember in North London. The same can't be said of City's narrow defeat at Bramall Lane, City losing 1-0 despite throwing the kitchen sink at Dean Henderson. With a run of winnable fixtures coming up, we assess whether Norwich have what it takes to survive in the pressure cooker of the Premier League. And finally, if you're wondering why I'm going out of my way to fit in these kitchen-based puns, that's because joining myself this week is EDP and Pinkin Chief Norwich City reporter Dave Freezer is joining us for what is his Canary Cast debut. Dave, thanks so much for joining us.
No worries. I was on a Wolves podcast recently and they were equally fascinated.
Were they?
Yeah. I don't think it's that interesting. I think Freezer's actually quite common in Norwich.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
You've had a busy week. You've had Spurs, Sheffield United.
Yeah, it has been a long week. 2 away days in 4 days, but yeah, Tottenham was great. So you're sort of buzzing on the back of that one. But Sheffield United, not quite the narrative we wanted, was it?
No, not quite. Not too far off though. Jacob, how are you doing this week?
Yeah, really well. Loved going to Spurs view, and
Great fun,
yeah, it was
wasn't it?
great atmosphere, wasn't it? And then, like Dave said, the Sheffield United tainted it slightly, but yeah, still optimistic for the weekend and weeks to come.
Dave, I think we'll start with you just for 5 minutes. I want to ask you a few things. We'll come on to Arch and all that stuff, but I want to throw you back to the times when you were covering Scunthorpe for the Scunthorpe Telegraph. Is that right?
Yeah, that is. That's where I started out. Yeah, straight after uni.
So that was first job out of uni.
Yeah, I did a few months temping here and there. Yarmouth Racecourse on the bar, and
Nice.
worked in the kitchens at Dunstan Hall for a little while as well. But then finally got my first gig, and yeah, I was really lucky actually. Time up there, covered 2 Wembley finals in the space of a few months. The Johnson's Paint Trophy final when they lost to Luton, and then the League One playoff final when they beat Millwall when they had Gary Hooper in the team. And yeah, it was. I was very fortunate while I was up there. It was really. I didn't just do Scunny. I did lots of local sport. It even did, right at the start, in sort of typical journalism training, I was doing like under 12s football on a Sunday morning and stuff, like going and doing match reports in the rain, trying to hold onto a brolly, writing with a pencil and stuff like that.
Glamorous.
So, yeah, it literally starts you at the bottom, and it was great. I really appreciated that time up there.
What's Glanford Park like? It is Glanford Park, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not great. It's certainly not Carrot Road, but it's all right. You know, they are sort of League 2 level clubs, so that was kind of their peak. You know, Nigel Adkins, they survived in the Championship as well, just not long before I left, and you know there was a pitch invasion at the fact that they'd survived relegation. So that was how massive it was for them. So yeah, Glanford Park I don't miss too much.
No, I'm not surprised. You are coming up to nearly a decade at Archant
Yeah, good spot.
in a couple of different roles.
Yeah, December, it'll be 10 years since I moved back to Norfolk. Did 3 years as a news reporter, and then moved over to sport and was doing local stuff mainly to start with, and then gradually started doing Norwich games with Paddy and Michael, mainly doing home games to start with, and then eventually over a couple of years ago now started doing home and away with Michael and Paddy to kick off with, and yeah, it just flies past, to be honest.
Well, you're a Norfolk boy, obviously. How hard is it to remain impartial, especially at the games?
Because of the stuff you just said about, because of Scunny and because of being a news reporter, I don't really find it that difficult anymore, to be honest. I was away for 3 years with uni as well, so I had a good chunk away, my 5 years up north, basically, which allowed me to sort of find a bit of that, to become a bit of a neutral. But I also knew from quite a young age, like sort of 15, 16, that I was going to try and go down the sports journalism route. So kind of, yeah, I was a bit rowdy, the same as most Norwich fans are when they're a teenager. But then I started to think, no, I need to look at this a bit more objectively. And yeah, I mean, Tottenham's a good example, to be honest. On Wednesday night, I tweeted something similar to this, that they're the moments when you're a little bit envious of being in the away end and you think, oh, it would be great to be in there with my dad or my best mate or whatever. But the vast majority of the time, you're so privileged to be doing what you're doing that it obviously balances it out. But yeah, Wembley, when you're sat in the press box and there's 39,000 Norwich fans having a party, and you've got like 6 hours work ahead of you. You're a little bit envious, but you're so lucky to be in the position you're in. So in terms of actually looking at it with a neutral eye, I don't find that too difficult. I don't think, anyway.
You mentioned Wembley there. Is that your best moment professionally?
Yeah, I don't know, actually. I think the end of last season beat it for me. The Sheffield Wednesday game, Vrancic's brilliant goal. Because where we were in the press box, you just had an amazing view of it. As soon as he struck it, you knew it was going in that far top corner. And the atmosphere at the end, the partying once promotion was finally done, after that little section without Buendia when they couldn't get over the line, when it was becoming a bit agonising, wasn't it? I think that just was slightly better than Wembley for me, but obviously Wembley was amazing as well.
Right, I think we'll move on to the Spurs game. We have to think way back now, because it was obviously last midweek. But Jacob, I'll come to you first from a fan's perspective. It was great, wasn't it? 9,000 heading down there.
Yeah, it was great to see, wasn't it? When we were in the pub and everything, everyone was really up for it, weren't they? And we all felt like we had a chance. I think, like we said on the previous pod, that Spurs are not what they've got a few players missing and everything like that. So, yeah, we definitely felt like we had a chance, and, well, proved to be the case.
Dave, there's a big story behind that, isn't there, for a journalist? 9,000 fans heading down midweek.
Yeah. That was always going to be a positive of the night. I have to say, at half time, I wasn't feeling too positive, because I thought the first half performance was pretty bad, to be honest.
Yeah, me too.
And some of the players that were given the chance that night, Vrancic, Rupp, and Tribal, really didn't hit the levels that they needed to. So in terms of on the pitch, at half time, I was not feeling particularly confident, because they haven't fought back at all in the Premier League all season. I was struggling to find any confidence, really, but they did. They changed things and they dug in, and the players that came on did make a difference. And in the end, I just think they wanted it more than Tottenham did. And once it got to the shootout, I genuinely think that the players thought, it's right, we've got Tim Krul in goal. He's going to save at least one of these.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll go on to more about that later, but I did feel confident heading into that shootout. You're right. You mentioned the first half there. Let's talk about it, because we conceded just 13 minutes in, of course. Another set piece.
Yeah.
Are we blaming Jamal Lewis there?
I'd say Vrancic as much to blame as Lewis. I actually think the free kick was pretty soft anyway. The one that Buendia tackled Bergwijn, I think it was.
Sounds right, yeah.
And then, Vrancic completely loses Vertonghen, and Lewis is caught out. But it's again the zonal stuff, isn't it? When you get a player who's got a run on one of the Norwich defenders and they manage to get up on them and power in a header like that, it just makes Zona look stupid, doesn't it?
It does. Jacob, I mean, from a fan's point of view, there's a lot of us there, travelled down, spent a lot of money, 13 minutes in.
Yeah, you think, here we go again, don't you? Like Dave said earlier, we haven't come back this season. So it felt a bit of a frustration. And again, it's just the Achilles heel, isn't it? I don't really understand the zone. Or in the whole game, again, Buendia's marking Vertonghen mostly from corners, and I don't fully get that, to be honest. I know it allows you space to be able to have your best headers available, but for me, there's nothing better than being able to challenge and contact in the box legally.
You said the first half wasn't that good, Dave. Completely agree with you. To me, it seemed like Spurs were having quite some success breaking through sort of Mora, Bergwijn through midfield, but we didn't make as much out of that first half as we could, because they were quite happy for us to have the ball at times, weren't they?
Yeah, I suppose that's sort of, well, certainly once they had the lead, they did. And
yeah,
they knew that they could keep Norwich at arm's length the way that they were playing. But yeah, I mean, Daniel sort of went with a 4-1-4-1, which he's tried a few times, and I think that was generally his favoured formation with Dortmund's under-23s, wasn't it? But it's just never worked, and particularly with Tribal, because Tribal's somewhere in between a Vrancic and a Teti. He's not a specialist of either two, is he? And yeah, it didn't work. Thankfully, they reacted and they went for it. I mean, I thought Adam Eder made a big difference, actually. I said in our podcast that I always thought there were a little bit of a hint of sort of Rashford style there, in terms of when Rashford plays wide and how good he looks there. I'm not saying in terms of the same quality. He's got a long way before he gets to that, but in the way that he was able to use his strength and power to cause problems, he then ended up playing all of extra time plus, what was it, say 15 minutes, something like that, of normal time. It was good to see that reaction, but yeah, first half wasn't good enough, and I think if you're brutally honest, if Tottenham would have had Kane or Son on that pitch, they would have had it wrapped up by half time.
Agreed. Jacob, I want to talk about Lucas Rupp. 'Cause we saw him in a new position, another position. Well, where do you think he's going to settle eventually? And what did you make of his performance behind the striker?
Well, I think first half we were just too deep in general, really. We were too scared of that counter-attack with Bergwijn and Lucas. In terms of Lucas Rupp, you don't want to make him the scapegoat, but he didn't play well, did he? In terms of he had that opportunity, 12, 15 yards out, and you're just screaming at him, shoot. And there's obviously not enough confidence in his own ability there to take that chance. Same with when you go back to the home game against Liverpool. And even before that, when he's played against Spurs in the league game, had chances, didn't he? Dragged it wide quite a lot. But he's not an attacking midfielder, is he? I think, like we said off the pod a few times, that he's kind of like a Tom Tribal. Well, I don't see him being a useful winger. I can see him definitely being a useful in-between player and tidying up the play. He's decent enough on the ball, but for me, his confidence was shot after that first half, and it was better when he went off, which doesn't make it look good. But until we see him in his proper position, I can't really judge him properly, I don't think.
Dave, what have you made of Lucas Rupp so far? Because my expectation was that we wouldn't see him much this season. I think that was the general consensus. But he's featured pretty much every week in lots of different positions. What have you made of it so far?
Yeah, I certainly don't think we were expecting to be playing ahead of Buendia on the right, were we? At Spurs, I just wanted it to be... I know it's a subtle difference. A 4-1-4-1 and a 4-3-3 aren't that far apart, are they? But I would much rather have seen Vrancic and Rupp just a little bit deeper, nearer to Tribal, and make it more of a 4-3-3, so that you've got Campbell and Buendia pushing up alongside Pukki, because it's too often that Pucki's isolated. But yeah, I went down and interviewed Rupp, 2 or 3 weeks ago now, and you can tell that he was a little bit reticent about what he wanted to say. I think he's maybe a little bit hurt by the reaction to what he's offered so far. I mean, he very quickly opened up, I've got to score a goal soon, you know, that he was desperate to score a goal, and that it's been really, it's obvious that he's not had a left foot, or he's not confident at shooting with his left foot. If he had, I mean, he really probably would have had a goal by now. But the shot that Vorm spilled, he nearly got a little bit of luck there, didn't he? But it's just not quite happened for him. But as you say, I don't think we can really judge him. And if they are back in the Championship, as seems most likely now, he should be a good option.
Where do you think he'll fit into the team?
Well, that depends on the shape, I think. I'm quite keen for, if they go back down, to look at setting up with a 3 at the back. You look at Wolves and Sheffield United, how they've gone up. Okay, it's not as exciting, it's not as fancy football, but once you get to the Prem, as we've now been reminded, you've got to be able to grind out games. You're not going to be able to go up and play in the same open, exciting way. And in closer, you've got someone who is ideally suited to play in the left of a 3. Hanley arguably ideal for the centre, and then Zimmerman or Godfrey for the right of it. You should have the players there. Maybe even Sean Raggett is an ideal cover for Hanley for the centre.
Left-footed as well, I think, Sean Raggett?
Not 100% sure. I've only seen him play live 2 or 3 times. But, I mean, passing isn't his strong point anyway, is it, Raggett? Heading a ball, he can certainly do that, same as Hanley. So, for me, I guess you'd then be looking at either a 3-5-2, something like that, and perhaps Rupp would fit quite nicely on the right of a central midfield 3, something like that.
Yeah, you'll find no arguments here with that. We think 3 at the back would be a good idea as well.
Yeah, we've been banging that drum quite a lot, haven't we, in terms of you can tactically change it slightly as well, can't you, in game? And yeah, I think it would definitely offer, because Norwich this season just haven't been able to keep the ball out of the net, let's be honest, and that's probably the reason why we haven't been able to get back into games either. We're chasing them a lot of the time. I
wrote it in today's 6 Things in the paper, actually, that their record against teams who have played with 3 at the back this season, now, what was it? I did work it out. It was lost 5, drawn 2, lost 1, 1-1, sorry, which was the Newcastle home game, and they sort of, it's more of a 5 at the back, isn't it, under Bruce, although he seems to have sort of taken off the shackles a little bit now that they're safe. So, yeah, I think a lot of teams are going to start moving towards that 3, because it just gives you a more solid base to go from. And defenders are not like defenders were 20 years ago, or maybe even 10 years ago, in terms of, you look at Godfrey, he has got that technical ability, isn't he? And I think the vast majority of defenders now have that passing ability.
Right, another player I want to talk about, Dave, is Drummich, or Dermich, however you want to pronounce it, because he's a different player to Pukki, but we're starting to see what he can produce.
We are, yeah. Spoke to him after the Sheffield United game for the first time. Actually, he's sort of confident enough with his English now to take some questions. And I think this last week we've certainly seen a lot from him. And actually at Wolves when he came off the bench, and against Leicester when he in both substitute appearances, he's really put himself about, and he finally looks like he's happy with his body. His hamstring obviously was the last problem that he had, but he's really putting himself about. He looks quite quick as well and hungry. He has got a Euro 2020 place to play for with Switzerland, and as he said to me after the game, his manager said, "If you're not playing, I can't pick you." So he has really got a point to prove. And I know he came on a free, but then when you sign on a free, you usually get a decent sign-on bonus. And he will have been on decent wages, won't he? Coming from the Bundesliga, this is a guy that finished third highest scorer in the Bundesliga in 2014. So although he was a free transfer in terms of fee, he will have cost Norwich a decent bit of money. And I would imagine it's about time they gave him the chance to sort of show it, because we all love Teemu Pukki. How much good stuff has been written and said about Pukki? He has been amazing for Norwich, but he's not doing it at the moment. And if you just give him a little bit of rest, let him get that toe absolutely back to 100%, who knows? As Daniel said after the game at Sheffield United, if he can come off the bench and score one off his backside or something, then finally he can get a bit of a restart.
Absolutely. What have you made of Dermot, Jacob, specifically at Spurs? Because he had that the header and then the goal itself. Talk us through the goal if you want.
Well, I thought just before that he's made some good runs in the game and was working hard. Obviously, he is a completely different player to Pukki, and he looks awkward to play against. He's obviously very tall, and like Dave said, he does seem to have a bit of pace on him. For the goal, it's just pure instinct, isn't it? Obviously, Vorm had a few spillages in the game. Rusty hasn't played for a long time, has he? So it was fantastic predatory instincts, really, and fair play to him. Like, to chase it up, it's an instinct you can't really teach. So he does look like he can have a goal in him. Against Sheffield United again, had a decent chance, was really unlucky not to finish it, really. But definitely a player that hopefully we can use for the final 9 games and score a couple more goals.
Absolutely. The other thing I wanted to talk about, and it's a Stuart Webber quote, and I think I saw it from Connor, about how 5 academy graduates were in the team and beating Spurs after the Tottenham game. Yeah. So Campbell, Godfrey, Aarons Lewis, and Ida for reference. But I mean, that's something to be really proud of, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something that fans are going to like when it comes off. There have been times even, think how highly we all thought of Max and Jamal last summer, but they've had difficult times this season. We've all Norwich fans have been reminded of just how vast the step up in quality is to the Premier League from the Championship, isn't it? I mean, the Championship's a great division. It's really competitive. There's a lot of quality in there, but essentially they are Premier League players who aren't able to produce consistently week in, week out. When you look at the top, 7, 8 teams, those players are able to play at a very high level every week. And, Max and Jamal have both had good games this year, just for instance. The same as Todd. Todd has had games where he's been awesome and he's looked, he has caught the attention clearly of other fans of other clubs, of pundits. They seem to talk about Todd all the time because he's quite an eye-catching player. But he's also had some poor games as well, hasn't he? And that's what comes with such reliance on young players. But the sad reality of that, which, if Norwich do go down, we are going to see, is that they are saleable assets that are going to be needed to be sold, not to balance the books. Norwich are safe, but if they're going to rebuild financial health as a self-funded club to ever get established in the top flight, this is a process, isn't it? And Stuart Webber's been open about that from the start, is that they have got to produce their own money. And as much as it's great to enjoy the academy lads while they're here and enjoy the good moments, we know that they're probably not going to be around forever.
No, yeah, completely agree. I think you look back at this and this relegation, which is probably at the moment probably be the most painful one for a fan, simply because you're more emotionally connected to homegrown players, aren't you? It's just the way it is. For me, Aarons and Lewis have improved recently. I think Jamal, obviously, that goal against Leicester was incredible.
It was great.
Yeah, it was the only place I think where he could have actually scored.
Yeah.
Jammer's slammer, please.
Yes, yeah, sorry. And was unlucky again against Sheffield United. For me, they've all got still parts of their game to definitely improve on, and hopefully we get to keep a couple to further develop, and then fingers crossed you come back and come back stronger.
Do you think it will be some sort of golden generation, or do you think we'll continue to see graduates from the academy?
It's difficult to presume, isn't it? Obviously, Norwich have a decent record in the last 10 years or so with your Murphys, etc. but we're saying five, aren't we? Counting Godfrey, really. 5 big players who are coming through all at the same time. Time is very rare, and you will look back at it we shouldn't really have taken it for granted, I think.
I don't think they'll all go, though. I don't think it's going to be a fire sale because they don't need to sell all of them, and it will tear too much out of the team. I think realistically, Aarons and Buendia are the two who are most likely to go. Godfrey possibly because he just seems to have such an active agent. He seems to be pretty dead set on staying in the Premier League already, doesn't he? But I think there may be some tough conversations to be had with probably Jamal and Todd in terms of Stuart's going to have to try and persuade them to give the club another 6 months. If with Cantwell, I'd look at what Jack Grealish did. You know, he stayed with Villa. He just started to make waves in the Premier League, hadn't he? But by the time he's got back there, he's a much more rounded player. He's a hero to Villa fans now, isn't he? He's captain as well. I think.
He is, yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying give Todd the armband because Grant Hanley is probably the right captain at the moment, and Zimmerman is probably the next in line to be captain. But, you know, empower him, make him feel like he's an important part. He's a local lad. And, Dean Ashton, when Norwich came back down, they weren't in promotion contention, so they sold him in the January. Robbie Brady, same thing. So you come to an agreement with those guys that, okay, if we're not looking like we're going back up straight away, we'll look at selling you in January.
If you had to put a number on how many you think we'll see leave.
Yeah, I can't see more than 3.
No, I actually think 2.
And my concern, obviously, which is a bit fresh, is probably Tim Krul now. I think he is going to be wanted by as many people as anyone, really. He's been so consistent. And I stuck up for Tim last summer quite a lot when Ralph Fairman came in, saying that all the people that seem to think that he's coming as the first choice, I always felt that Tim had the shirt and it was his to keep hold of. And that's how it's proved to be. And all of a sudden, it's like, Tim Krul was a high-profile goalkeeper. When he was Newcastle's proper number 1 and they were in Europe and stuff, he was linked with Man United, Inter Milan all the time. And all of a sudden, it's like, wow, we're a promoted club, but we've got a top-level goalkeeper. And he's been so good. So to see clubs like Schalke being linked with him, I think it's just the start. And, could Norwich deny a guy at 31? Maybe similar story with Pukki. If he were to go and score some goals for Finland in the summer at the Euros, it would be difficult to say to those guys, no, we want to keep you in the Championship.
Absolutely. I'm glad you've led me on perfectly there, Dave, because I want to talk about Timmy Krul in the context of the penalty shootout, because heading into that, standing up in the stands, I felt very confident.
Yeah, well, I think Dave said earlier that the players would have definitely thought he would have saved one. I also thought that there's no chance, especially looking at the Tottenham players available to take a penalty. There wasn't anyone that I thought that's a guaranteed goal. Same with Norwich, to be fair, but they obviously proved me wrong there. Tim Krul's just an expert, isn't he, really, in terms of what he does. He's the 2014 World Cup's massively documented, but he always seems to research well. Obviously, the infamous for Spurs bottle.
Did you think a bit much was made of all that bottle stuff? He's not the first keeper to do it.
No, it's pretty normal, isn't it?
I think it's pretty standard practice. But
it's just one of those where it's getting in the head, isn't it? I think he said, I can't remember where I saw it, but he said to Troy Parrott that I haven't seen many of your penalties before, and it just gets in his head, doesn't
He's
it?
Such a shit house.
Yeah.
I love it personally. It's great to see that though, because you can rely on players like that, can't you, in those moments? But who do you think took the best penalty? I'm going to go with Cantwell.
I'm going Ida.
Yeah.
Ida, sorry.
Yeah, that's a good pen.
That will get in the head one day. Ida. Just because of the position he was in the shootout. And the fact that Daniel or the coaches wrote down the list, as Adam revealed after the game, and that he was told he was number 2. That is bold from the coaches to say, 19-year-old in your 5th senior game, you're taking the second penalty. Then McLean misses, of course, and they need him to score. And he puts it literally top bins, doesn't he? It was brilliant.
Great point. Jacob?
Yeah, completely agree. I was thinking, obviously, we've seen him take a penalty. It wasn't the greatest against Preston, but it still went in. But yeah, absolutely fantastic penalty. I like that Todd said after the game that he enjoyed the pressure of taking the penalty. I think that just kind of shows how much he's grown this season. Yeah. Last year, he wasn't scared to take the ball on, but he's just knocked off the ball so easily. But this year, he's really just stepped up his game. But yeah, for me, Ida's was incredible, really.
I know some people talk about Todd being sort of arrogant, and he's I've spoken to Todd. I think it's more confidence. And Todd's a nice guy. I've spoken to him quite a few times in his career, and he's quite a down to earth, intelligent bloke. I I don't really like the sort of arrogance thing that swirls around. I just think it's confidence. You look at all the top players. That's what you have to do. Madison had it, didn't he?
Well, yeah, I was going to say James Maddison, exactly, and no one criticised that because, well, he was banging in goals left, right and centre for Norwich. You've got to be confident in your ability, and, well, he's shown it this season. He's backed it up, hasn't he?
He has. Because of Tim Krul's heroics, we never saw who was going to take the 5th pen. Dave, do you know?
Yeah, Daniel did get asked at the presser on Friday, and he said it would have been Dermich.
Okay.
And then he said it was something along the lines of, I would have just given up then because it would have been Grant Hanley next or something.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds about right. So that, of course, means we've got United at home in the next round. Do you fancy it, Jacob?
We need to. We owe them a decent performance at least. Both times, Ole's outdone Daniel really in terms of tactics, and I do feel like it could be a bit of a Spurs first half again, where we drop deep because we were just so fearful of that counter attack. They've done better recently. Obviously, good result against City. They're going to come here with confidence, but at Carroll Road, 27,000 fans behind you. I don't see why not.
Dave, do you fancy it?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think Carroll Road is going to be absolutely buzzing for this. I think it's going to have the sort of intensity of a derby day, really. The first FA Cup quarter-final since '92. It's something that fans are going to be desperate for, regardless of what happens against Southampton. Obviously, if they get the win on Saturday and keep the survival hopes just about alive, then great. That adds a bit of momentum and a bit of more hope, doesn't it? But I don't think it will have too much bearing because the fans are going to be bang up for it. The players are definitely going to be up for it. The players maybe even more so if they lose to Southampton because that's almost going to be something they need to get on their CV, isn't it? An FA Cup semi-final, particularly for the ones who are maybe looking at a summer exit. But yeah, as you say, they definitely owe Man United one. Good that Rashford won't be involved, although they've now got Fernandes, who's looking pretty awesome.
Looks very good, yeah.
And their unbeaten run has just got going. I've got a bit of respect for Solskjaer, to be honest. He's really sort of ridden out the storm and come out the other side. So fair play to him. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. Tickets are going to be like hotcakes. I'm going to have to try really hard to get one. But yeah, so a win at Spurs in the Cup. We go flying into the weekend. I was feeling confident, slightly concerned that Sheffield United had an extra day of rest. But the team would have been upbeat. Changes in the team. We saw Pukki rested at Spurs. We had every reason to think we could get something out of the game.
Yeah, I think so. And I think they proved in the second half that if they had set up better, then they could have beaten them. They should have probably got a point. Henderson has saved them in the end. But first half, the defence and Krul really did have to work hard to survive because they just bombarded the box. And once they had the lead, they just grew in confidence. And I like Sheffield United fans, maybe not online because the bickering is just pathetic. I don't know. There seems to be an issue with Norwich fans and Sheffield United fans just can't agree on.
It was from that coach incident, wasn't it? Where the coach turned up late. Was it?
Oh, of course, in Daniel's first year.
Yes.
I guess so, yeah. And the song, Take Your Time, Norwich City, which was Angus Gunn winding them up. But yeah, that rivalry has been there. But, I've got a lot of respect for the job that Wilder's done, but also the way their fans are. They make it an intimidating place, and that's what you should do. That's what a football stadium should be like. And they got on top of Norwich at every opportunity, wrongly or rightly. For instance, I think it was 5 minutes in, John Fleck clatters Max Aarons. Terrible decision from the referee. Didn't even give a free kick. Should have been a yellow card. Nailed on. But they get on top of Max Aarons and boo and say he's diving. That's what a home crowd does, isn't it? They then annoy the away fans. They annoy the away manager. They get on top of the referee. They make it an intimidating place. And their team sort of are like that as well, aren't they? They're strong. They're streetwise. But the biggest thing is that they wanted to win every single second ball. They wanted to get crossed into the box because they know Norwich are vulnerable to it. And, Norwich set up as normal, 4-2-3-1. They didn't change to fit a team who are 2 points off the Champions League places. Yeah. Well, they were on Saturday. I suppose Chelsea won on Sunday. So is that back to 5 now, is it? Without having the table in front of me. Perhaps Norwich should have just paid a bit more attention to the opposition on this occasion.
Yeah, Sheffield United are a tough prospect these days, Jacob, but it wasn't like we didn't have chances.
Well, it's just, like Dave was saying, it's slightly frustrating because this team is, well, Daniel Farke knows this team surely the best out of any team in the Premier League and how they're going to play. That's been, I know we've had injuries this season, but it is a frustration. He does seem stubborn at times to change due to the opposition. I think even if you did throw it, as in, when I know not fit, but Billy Sharp's not going to stretch his legs, is he, in behind? If you did change to a three at the back, you'd feel a lot more comfortable. And to be honest, that goal would have been stopped, or definitely a lot trickier for Sharp to score if there was another centre-back there. What was your question? I've completely lost it.
It's all right. You've led me on to something else. We'll come back to it. Don't worry. Because I want to talk about the goal that we conceded. Because when we have two strikers going at our two centre-halves, we seem to struggle. Of course, they had Sharp and McBurney. And Hanley sort of lost Sharp, but I think maybe Aaron's could have helped him out there a bit as well, Dave.
Possibly. I just think the cross was so good. I think the blame really is with Cantwell and Duda. Cantwell went inside, which is fair enough if you're going to do that, but Duda then has to react, and he just trotted over to him. And he literally rolled his foot over the ball, gazed into the penalty box for what felt like 10 seconds, picked his spot, and it was a wonderful cross. I don't think Hanley and Godfrey can be blamed too much for it, because when you literally get one whipped right in front into the sort of corridor of uncertainty as it is between centre-backs and goalkeeper, and Sharp just had to divert it goal with, you're going to concede goals at times. So, but I'm sure the punch of the air from Hanley, which nearly ended up being a punch of McBurney, was aimed in the direction of Duda and Cantwell, because they just did not do enough to stop the cross coming into the box. And they openly said after the game as well that they were trying to... They were aware of trying to stop crosses and free kicks and corners, and you could see the frustration that happened to Buendia a couple of times, like ahead of the goal and another corner that he conceded, where he was so frustrated because Daniel had obviously said don't do it, but that Sheffield United know what they're doing, and they just poured forward. And to be fair, the second half they were a bit confused by what Norwich offered at them, at least.
We had chances to reply, Jacob. I'm thinking of Timu Pukki here. I can't believe he missed it.
Well, I'm not obviously surprised by the miss, but the way he's taken the effort, I didn't ever expect to watch Timu Pukki slash at 5-6 yards out. It just shows that he's lacking confidence in his own game at the moment, isn't he? It was a big chance. Going back to the Sheffield United goal, Duda, too sloppy. Basham did well with the overlap. Again, famous overlapping centre-backs this season now, isn't it? Everyone
dragged him out a bit, didn't he?
Yeah, but again, it is frustrating because, again, surely you talk about that during the game. If the centre-backs go in, okay, one go, make sure the cross doesn't come in. But like Dave said, the ball in from Lundstrom, who's been a revelation this season, was an incredible ball in. And it just has to be Billy Sharp, doesn't it? I think it kind of shows that two predatory strikers each end of the pitch, and one's in form enough to finish his chance, and Timu not, unfortunately.
He didn't get Socko out this time.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you make of Pukki's form at the minute, Dave? Because he is a bit out of form. He's snatching at chances, that chance in particular I'm thinking of. Do you think it's still his toe?
I think probably not by this point physically. You would have thought that that's sorted by now. But I think the problem was that Dermot was out injured when it happened, and they didn't want to play Eder up front. So they, at that point, and they... sort of flogged him while he was half fit. Then he misses a couple of chances. I think that VAR decision against Spurs also probably knocked him psychologically. It would surely knock anyone, because that was horrible, wasn't it? It was
onside.
I mean, you can argue that the technology doesn't actually prove he was offside, and even if it does, let's not get into VAR and offside, because they are actually saying it may even be in time for the Euros now, aren't they, UEFA, that there will be thicker VAR lines. But if you need the lines, then it's not clear and obvious.
Yes, agreed.
Let's not go there. So I think that probably knocked him a bit further back, and then he has just never quite recovered. But as much as anything, I think he's just mentally a bit weary. The guy has played loads and loads of football. Last year it was 36 goals in 56 games. Then he's had all that hype with Finland, and he just kept rolling and rolling. And eventually, he sort of hit a brick wall, and he does not look the same player at the moment. So you need to give him a bit of a breather and let him rediscover it, because we know he can do it. We know that he's capable of finishing chances really easily. But at the moment, I think he just needs a bit of a hand, and I guess he needs his manager to get the arm around the shoulder and keep reminding him that you can do it at the top level.
I think that's helped actually with Sheffield United. They've rotated so much, haven't they? Like Billy Sharp, McBurney, Mousset, and McGoldrick. None of them have really been the main guy, but they've all chipped in with goals when they've played. And yeah, it is disappointing. I think the trust in Adam Eder I know he's not ready, but it's frustrating again to have a player there. And if you're not going to trust him, would you have brought someone else in? All these kind of things when you think about it. But yeah, hopefully he does come back, and he'll probably fly for Finland, won't he, in time.
Push his price up.
Well, yeah, potentially.
Players after international tournaments, if they've done well, tend to go for a lot of money.
Yeah, he could certainly boost it. I mean, the one thing with Pukki is his age, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is he 30 yet, or he's
30? I think 29th of March.
Yeah, right. So it's close.
Yeah,
So,
coming up.
if he was 25, then Norwich would have, been struggling to hold on to him. But even if he goes and scores a few goals now, then teams are going to be thinking hard about it. But Norwich would love to have him back in the Championship, wouldn't they? So and all the players are going to have relegation clauses in their contract. So you would have thought they can afford to keep him if needs be. So I suppose from a Norwich point of view, you kind of hope that's what happens. But Dermot and Eder both seem like they'd be decent options for the Championship. I suppose in hindsight, you could look at it and say, yeah, they needed one more striker. But with Daniel always playing one up front, I guess that was their thinking. But as soon as Dermot was injured, they then had to keep playing Pukki, didn't they?
Let's talk about that goal line scramble that I thought it was in, but it clearly wasn't. Because it was Dermot following in again.
Yeah.
After the initial header, that's how he scored at Spurs. And I thought, Daniel Farke has spoken about how he wants him to do that, the whole Hoover salesman analogy. And he's clearly doing it.
He is. I think Dermot's would have been ruled out by VAR anyway, because Vrancic handled it, didn't he?
I thought he looked like he...
In the scramble with Henderson, I'm pretty... The first one, I think, would have been fine. But that's the one that Henderson actually kept out on the line, wasn't it? Yeah. And then it hits Mario's hand from the replays that I saw, and it looked sort of clear in real time as well. So I'm not sure that it would have stood for Dermot. But, yeah, Henderson... That was sensational. I mean, Godfrey really connected well with it. It was finally a good... Buendia sort of took over from Duda from the corners and delivered a really good one right near the penalty spot. Godfrey sort of barges people out of the way, gets their powerful header. And, I mean, Henderson's having an inspired season. But regardless of what I just said about VAR, he still managed to swipe the ball away from Dermot. McGoldrick, to be fair to him, does well to get the ball away. It just felt like one of those days where Norwich could have played for another hour and it wouldn't have gone in the back of the net.
Yeah. Painstaking moment in that game, Jacob. But again, it's almost story of the season. I don't want to be too harsh, but we've been very close at times and not quite there.
Yeah, and 6 away goals all season, isn't it? It just shows that really we haven't changed, like we said earlier, we haven't changed enough to teams playing in front of their home crowd. And every team plays differently home and away, apart from Norwich, it seems at times, which has been, I'd say, a little bit naive this season. And yeah, like copy and paste so many performances this season. If we'd finish this chance, if we'd finished that, is disappointing. I'd say we'd probably just about done enough for a point with the second half performance. But yeah, one that's got away once again.
Jacob mentioned the 6 away goals all season there, Dave. Can you name them?
Right. Well, Liverpool.
Yeah.
Yep.
I had the
Everton,
same from earlier.
2.
Yeah, that's right.
Tottenham 1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, I'm already struggling. There's 2 more. No.
Leicester.
Yeah.
There's one more. It'll be very clear. We're playing them very soon.
Southampton. I didn't go to that game.
Tete
That
assist.
was
Yeah.
Pukki, was it?
Yeah,
Second.
yeah.
Yeah.
World-class ball from Tete.
I think that's the only game I've missed this season.
Oh, that'd be nice. I wish I was true of myself. What is it about playing away, Dave? Why has it just not worked this season? Everton aside.
Yeah, that's a good question. They definitely seem just happier at home. Like I'm immediately more confident that they'll beat Southampton because I think they look forward to the atmosphere now. They do feel the connection with fans. I know the players are always going to say that sort of thing, but it doesn't feel like they're hollow words at the moment. Yeah, away from home, I can't see any obvious reason for it other than quality. They just never seem to be able to execute away from home. I think the damage was done really early. Those the 2-0 defeats at Brighton and Palace and West Ham, I think that hurt them quite deeply, and they knocked them backwards quickly. When you look back on that West Ham one, and Haller does Zimmerman and doesn't even get booked for it, I think that was a fairly demoralising experience for them. And when you go to these big stadiums, it's quite easy for it to feel like you want the ground to open you up and swallow you, I suppose, as a player, because they've looked pretty miserable at points, and the mixed zone is a privilege to be in when things are going well, but when you're bottom of the league and they keep losing games, players aren't particularly keen to chat, and we literally see them coming out of the dressing rooms, and you can see how much it hurts them. They have been really fed up at points this season.
Jacob, anything to add to our away form?
Well, yeah, I think like Dave said, it's just players playing in bigger arenas for the first time. I think in the Championship, to be fair, you are potentially playing in bigger stadiums, but not bigger crowds, really. Norwich is quite high up there, isn't it, really, apart from Leeds away? It's a tricky one, isn't it? It's one of those where if you... it comes back to me, that Chelsea game at home, if you get a point there from when we were behind, just eventually losing out, and it just becomes that reoccurrence, doesn't it, in terms of you lose and you just don't think you're going to come back into it. And it is a real disappointment, really, but we've never been that good away from home in the Premier League, really, or in recent years, and our home form hasn't been good enough to rely on.
At least they won a game. The worthy team didn't win a game, did they?
No, that's true.
Yeah, spot on.
We have now got it looks like a friendlier set of fixtures coming up, but before we go on to that, we've played the last 3 or 4 games have been more difficult opposition. I'm talking Wolves, Leicester. Who else have we played recently?
Sheffield United,
and then we had Liverpool before that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I remember saying at the start of that period, look, if we want to stay up, we are going to have to get something. And looking forward now, if we are to stay up, which is looking like a bit of a big ask, but if we are going to have to find a way to pick up points away from home, aren't we?
Oh yeah, and you look at Arsenal and Chelsea at the moment. That I find it very difficult to see Norwich getting anything there. Manchester City, it's difficult to tell at this point. They could well be on the beach again. It could well be that they completely focus on the Champions League. Guardiola's looking at young players. That one we'll have to see close to the time. There might be something, but to think that Norwich are still going to have something to play for on the last day of the season as we sit here today is difficult to see. It is sort of game by game because it depends on what the other teams do now. Norwich need 3 other teams, they need 3 other teams to have a real bad end to the season, don't they, to get out of it, as well as doing it themselves. So I think they need to win 6 of the 9. I think 36 isn't quite going to be enough to stay up. I think 39 would probably just about do it. But yeah, if they don't win the home games against those teams, then obviously they've got very, very little chance. Because it's typical Arsenal, isn't it? Spring starts and they start to play with freedom. But Chelsea are looking really good at the moment as well as an attacking force. They were playing Everton yesterday. Norwich in recent weeks wouldn't have really wanted to play Everton, and they've swatted them aside so easily that I said on our podcast before the Sheffield United game that they had a 90% chance of going down, and I still think you're talking about around that mark.
Agreed. Jacob, we'll touch on Southampton in a moment, but I mean, from this point forward, knowing what we know now, do you fancy a decent run at staying up or not?
Well, to be honest, in and around us, we haven't picked up points, so you'd have to say no, wouldn't you, against the 2 teams that we came up with? We haven't picked up a single point.
And this weekend would have been perfect with everyone else losing. Villa haven't played yet, admittedly, but...
Well, yeah, we just haven't done it in and around the teams that we've needed to, unfortunately, and it'll be the story of our season, really, just not really picking up points when needed. Absolutely.
Right, let's look forward to Southampton then, gents. Before we get going, let's establish whether Southampton are still in the relegation scrap or not. Dave, what do you think?
Nah, not for me. I think everyone north of Brighton is fine.
Yeah, so they're 14th, 34 points, 7 ahead of safety. Do you think they're safe, Jacob?
Yeah, they've got enough in terms of Ings to fire them to a couple of wins. They'll be fine.
I should clarify, I don't mean geographically north of
Yeah, no, I'm with you, yeah.
Above Brighton in the table.
Yeah. They were flying, of course, Southampton. They had that lovely run where they were picking up result after result. They've lost to Burnley, West Ham and Newcastle in recent weeks. Yeah. I fancy our chances in our living room, as Daniel would say.
Yeah, I would hope that they certainly are in with a good shout of this one. I mean, kind of from what we just said about the chances of them staying up being so slim, and they know that they haven't really hidden away from that too much either. Just go for it. It's just all out attack now. You've got nothing else to do, particularly at home. Just try and smash someone, because if it has to be a 4-3, just go for it. It needs that kind of epic.
Well, it's must win, really.
Absolutely must win. If they lose this one, it's over. I'm afraid, and they'll know that as well. But Southampton, I think it's 4 of the last 5 they've lost, isn't it? So they have tailed off a little bit. Gineppo got sent off, didn't he? In their game against Newcastle, so that helps a little bit. But Danny Ings has had a brilliant season. But I feel like Norwich defensively in general have been much better recently. And Southampton, unless I'm mistaken, don't play like Sheffield United. I don't think they're going to bombard the box. They're sort of in a coach like Hasenhüttl is probably closer to Daniel Farke than he is to Steve Bruce or Chris Wilder in terms of style, isn't he? So, I certainly would go into this one with a decent bit of hope, because I think Norwich will be fired up for it, because I think the players are hurting at the moment. And as we said earlier, the players are playing for futures, whether it's with Norwich or elsewhere. That even if they were to lose this game, that whatever happens, they've all still got plenty to play for this season. So if things go wrong and they're relegated in April or whatever, the worst case sort of scenario, you would hope that there's still plenty to keep them going. It's not going to just be like a flat end of the season like Huddersfield had last year when they were relegated in February, weren't they?
Yeah, it was really early. Yeah,
and none of their players, other than sort of Philip Billing, were particularly sought after. So they just wanted the season to be over. I would hope, very much hope, and with Daniel Farke in charge as well, that this group will still keep fighting and still want to go down swinging.
Jacob, the return fixture was a fairly painful watch, especially that first half. When you think of Southampton, they have the James Ward-Prowse threat from set pieces and Danny Ings up top, and they certainly exploited them in the return fixture. Do you think we'll have learnt from that?
They might play differently, like Dave said. Gineppo's suspended, Redmond injured, so at the moment they've got Buffal, that's about it, on the wings, maybe Obafemi, but pace-wise, they're probably not going to hurt Norwich too much, meaning the press might be slightly different.
Is Redmond definitely out, is he?
Well, he's out for a month or so, and he hasn't played recently, so I'd presume that he's going to struggle to come straight back into it.
That'd be helpful.
Yeah, well, definitely, yeah. I think at pace, Norwich, with the fullbacks going forward as much as they do, pace on the counter is always an issue, isn't it? Long, he's not a goal scorer. He is what he is, isn't he? Good threat in the air, potentially, but
He likes scoring against Norwich.
he does indeed. But Danny Ings, for me, is obviously the one to stop. Buffal could play an incredible game. He's so hit and miss, isn't he? But they give you chances, Southampton. We've had Southampton fans on before, haven't we, in terms of saying their centre-back options are dreadful and they just need to limp towards the end of the season and get that sorted. So for me, there's a massive opportunity there.
What do you think about this threat Southampton posed, Dave? Because with James Ward-Prowse from the free kicks, Ings, McCarthy was good again at the weekend against Newcastle. Really good game.
That was a brilliant penalty save.
It was, yeah. He had
That
a really
triple
good
save
game
as well. Was incredible, wasn't it?
Yeah, very good.
But, generally, is it James Ward-Prowse and Danny Ings that you worry about?
Yeah, well, Ings is just so confident, isn't he? He's just one of those... and I guess he is resurgent because he's had so many injury problems. It was really nice when they played Liverpool, wasn't it? All the Liverpool players went and gave him big hugs and stuff, because I think they were just so pleased for him that he's got his career back on track. He could even end up in the England squad this summer, given that the striker situation is struggling in terms of injuries. So, yeah, he's the big danger man. Yeah, Buffal is one that you try and keep at arm's length, but he is capable of something special, but I'm not too worried about him. And Ward-Prowse, I think Ward-Prowse is a little bit of like a Harry Wilson. If he wasn't so good at set pieces, I'm not sure he'd be such a high level player. But yeah, he obviously has a real threat there, and I can't see them. Sheffield United put 34 crosses in against Norwich. That's ridiculous. Yeah. I'm sure that won't happen from Southampton. And in general, Hanley has been pretty good recently, hasn't he? And I feel like he holds that defence together pretty well, but so much of it comes down to Norwich getting the first goal, doesn't it, right now? When they fall behind, like particularly at Wolves, once they were behind, they just looked like they knew their fate was set. And if they can just burst out of the traps, get that first goal, I don't see any reason why, as long as they can find a sort of ruthless streak, that they can't put a few goals past Southampton, and then that's a real release of pressure, isn't it? And everyone's buoyed for the FA Cup, and who knows? There is obviously still, as I've sort of termed it a little bit earlier, a 10% chance of something special happening, isn't it? And it could still happen. They could go and beat Southampton 3-0. They could go and find a way past Manchester United and bang you in the FA Cup semi-finals going to Wembley. Then what more could you want in terms of confidence and momentum to spark something special? But yeah, as we said earlier, if they don't spark that now, it's very unlikely to happen.
You mentioned the Southampton centre-backs, Jacob. I mean, not specifically them, but generally, how do you think we approach this game, or how do you think Norwich approach this game? Where do we get at them, etc.?
Well, it'll be exactly the same as what we always do, isn't it? Just
I don't know why I bothered to ask that every week, but yeah.
It's plan A, isn't
yeah,
it?
exactly.
Like
Exactly. I struggled to answer it because we know exactly how we're going to play.
That's unfortunate, isn't it? Because you know Hernandez is out, so you can't bring him into the attack. No. So you basically know what the team's going to be, don't you? You know what the defence is going to be, unless he does something unusual and brings Zimmerman into a back three. But none of us are really expecting that, are we?
Do you know how fit Zimmerman is?
I think it was more of a sort of emergency cover. You know,
Okay.
Second half he seemed to be basically using it as a sort of a fitness session. He was sprinting up and down the sideline, wasn't he? Almost thinking, I'm not getting on here, so I might as well go through my fitness regime. So I think it's more of their easing him back. Of course, the big thing for him is he's got to be fit for the FA Cup game because Hanley's suspended, isn't he, against Man United?
Of course, yeah.
So that's going to be his absolute main focus. That he's going to be totally pumped for because he will be playing in that one unless something awful happens. But yeah, you know, there's no Byram to come in at either fullback. There's no centre back. The keeper's not going to change. The midfield, okay.
Who would you go with there, Dave? Out of interest,
I would still go with Tetty and McLean because they have been the best partnership recently, and they are more solid. And McLean is still capable of it. But I think sort of the problem at Sheffield United and probably recently is that Cantwell, Buendia, Duda are all very similar. They all just want to be on the ball and they're happy for players to be in front of them. There isn't a Hernandez, is there? There isn't someone who's going to penetrate, who isn't going to get behind and mix things up. And it does make Norwich a bit predictable. And it means that you are basically relying on a bit of magic from one of those three. And they can't consistently produce that, can they? So as it so often is with Daniel Farke, but even more so at the moment, it is plan A, and plan A's got to work. You've got to get a goal ahead, and then you've got to press home with your advantage.
you mentioned Duda very briefly there. What have you made of him so far?
Yeah.
It's hit and miss, isn't it?
He's becoming a Naismith, isn't he? Because his debut was very encouraging. He looked really good. He should have had a goal if it wasn't for that handball from Steve Cook, was it?
Yeah,
world
world-class save.
A world-class save, yeah. And he looked really up for it. Ever since, there's been flashes. I wouldn't say he's been terrible, but he's not been as good as that day was, and he's not offering enough. Not for a player who, at first, Daniel was like, well, this is a guy who would have cost 25 million last summer. What was it, 11 goals and 7 assists in the Bundesliga? That's high level.
That's James Maddison money.
Yeah, that isn't the player we're seeing at the moment, is it? No. I'm afraid to say. And it's not that he's putting himself about, but I guess it's a confidence thing. And it was difficult for him and Rupp, to be fair, that they've come into a team bottom of the table. It was always going to be a big ask for them to have a real big impact. But yeah, Duda's not offering enough creatively. And I guess that probably follows on from what I just said, in that he's very similar to Buendia and Cantwell, isn't he? But if those three can just get on the same page at the same time, they should be able to make some magic happen against most Premier League defences. And Southampton don't play a three at the back, do they? So, and yeah, like you were saying, who do they play at centre back? It's Bednarak, isn't it?
Bednarak, yeah. Stevens, more, yeah, Vestergaard on the bench.
Bertrand doesn't seem to be the player that he was, and has never been particularly strong defensively. So, you know, Norwich need those three to come up with a bit of magic.
Well, Southampton have conceded 52 goals, same as Norwich. So
yeah,
defensively, they are
Just sleeky.
Yeah.
The thing we were talking about earlier at work, Jacob, about who do you start up top? Do you start Timu Pukki? Do you start Josip Drmic and sort of repay his exploits in recent weeks? Where do you stand on that?
For me, you go with Drmic. I think he's more awkward to play against. I think he holds the ball up better, can bring players into game. I think with Duda, the thing is, it's difficult, but you need to give him the ball in the best place for him in a in a way that he's not going to create a chance like an Emmy and beat 3 players and then play the ball through. If you get it to the right area for Duda, he then could possibly create like we've seen in flashes against Leicester where he played through Pookie.
Unlucky not to score. I mean, that was a brilliant save from Schmeichel.
Exactly, and again, that's him picking it up in just the right area, isn't it? 25 yards out from goal. But going back to the point, I think Teemu just needs a rest. I think he's absolutely knackered still, mentally, maybe not as much physically.
That is a long rest.
Well, obviously, okay, then you drop him because he hasn't performed. If you want to be more
That
blunt
was
about
what
it.
I was getting at. Dave, where do you stand on this?
Yeah, I think it's got to be Dermot. Give Pookie a rest, but also he's a good impact player, isn't he? We know he's quick, and then he's got a point to prove because his position hasn't been under threat basically all season. He's known that he's going to be playing. He's known the pressure's on him. The expectation is on him, and I think a good thing that happened on Saturday at Bramall Lane was that Daniel Farke reacted. He as much as anything, for a good chunk of the supporters, needed to be seen to be doing something proactive. He made a half-time change. Immediately, people couldn't be, oh, he always makes his changes too late. Okay, he probably could have brought Ida on earlier than whatever it was, 86th minute. He also brought Vrancic on midway through the second half, didn't he? And he changed the shape. What he did tactically worked. But for me, Dermot looks hungry, he looks quick, he looks fired up. And what have they got to lose?
He probably deserves it.
Yeah, I think he probably does deserve it on the intent that he's put in and the work rate, and he has scored. You know, he's got 3 goals and he's only started 2 games.
Yeah.
So his goal scoring ratio is pretty phenomenal for a guy who's had such injury problems. So what have you got to lose? You're bottom of the league. Give it a try. If it doesn't work out, get Pookie on for half an hour.
Can I push you for a score prediction?
I feel good about this because I have always felt that Norwich wouldn't just disappear with their whimper, that they would keep it interesting. I think maybe an interesting one. 3-2 Norwich.
Nice, I'll take that. Jacob?
I'm going to say 2-1.
Norwich?
Yeah, 2-1 Norwich. We'll probably go 2-0 up. Let's concede a 70th, 80th minute goal like Norwich always seem to do. Make it, give us a heart attack for the final stand.
And then Pookie off the bench with the winner.
Yes,
yeah. I'm going to go, I do think we'll concede, so I'll go 2-1 as well. But there we go. Dave, just before we round off, I wanted to go through the remaining fixtures, and you tell us whether you think we'll get 3 points, 1 point, or no points.
Okay.
And then we'll see how many points we end up on, whether we're staying up, etc. Right, Jacob, you ready to keep tally, mate?
Yep.
Right, so Southampton at home, a win, yeah?
Win, go for a win.
And then we've got Everton at home. Well, actually, no, we haven't because it's the quarter-final and it's been postponed, hasn't it? So
I'd like to keep that one, if possible, schedulers,
yeah,
as far back in the season as possible.
yeah,
Because they could then be firmly on the beach, couldn't they?
Yeah, that would be nice, and good point as well. So then after the quarter-final, we have Arsenal away.
Lose.
Yeah. Brighton at home.
Win.
Watford away.
Yeah, this is
The
the one.
difficult team to play against.
That's probably the one you're looking at and saying if something's going to happen, they're going to have to win it.
Yeah.
I can't see it. I'm going to say lose.
West Ham at home.
Draw.
Chelsea away.
Lose. This isn't looking good, is it?
No.
Burnley at home.
Yeah, win.
Man City away.
Yeah. Let's say win.
Okay.
I've got a feeling that Man City are going to be in a really weird place at that point.
They might be on the beach.
They might be on the beach. They might be
Champions League.
thinking about Champions League. Yeah.
The only other thing, we do need to get a Everton result.
Well, let's say win then.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm pretty confident they'll give most teams a very good go of it at home. And I just don't think Everton are going to have a lot to play for.
What does that put us on, Jacob?
37.
Ooh, maybe.
So that would keep things interesting.
I think Newcastle got relegated on 37. Okay. Someone got relegated on 37 in the past 5 years. I think it's Newcastle.
If I remember rightly, I worked this out last summer, but I can't remember. I think the average stay up in the last 10 years was 34 points.
Yeah.
But the team who finished 17th actually has averaged 36 points. So 37. That would at least set up a final day
At Man City, Jesus.
chaos.
Goal difference is the only thing, isn't it? for Norwich. That minus 27 does give you 10 worse than Watford.
Well, and they need Villa to lose to Leicester tonight as well.
Yeah, definitely.
They've got 2 games in hand, haven't they, Villa?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
Sheffield United's everyone as well, isn't it? So hopefully you can be reasonably confident with that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just look at West Ham's fixtures, though. West Ham's fixtures are horrible. So Brighton don't look like they can actually buy a win at the moment, even though they play well. Still very slight optimism, but we do have to win it at Southampton.
I'll tell you what, though, if 37 points didn't keep them up, I think that would be enough to keep enough fans happy, to retain some momentum so that, Farke, he probably is anyway, but there's not going to be any talk about Daniel's future over the summer. It's literally going to be a case of, right, move on the ones who don't want to be here, bank a load of money, strengthen the squad, let's go for it again. Because financially this summer, they've sort of fixed the problems of the past, as they've said, the sins of the past is the line they like to use, isn't it? And if they did it, if they yo-yoed like Burnley did and other teams have managed, West Brom and things like that, then when they come back up, hopefully, I know I'm getting a bit far into the future here, but they would be able to come up in a different way. It wouldn't be, we're climbing Everest again. It would be, right, we're going for this. We feel we're good enough now. We've got a solid enough squad. We've got money to spend. We are going to try and put Norwich as an established Premier League team, because I think the supporters would expect that next time round. It's almost felt a little bit too little old Norwich. I know that's been enforced in a lot of ways because of the realities of the finances, but if they could do it, if they could bounce back, the club's going to be in a great position.
You don't want to go down with a whimper either, do you? Like Huddersfield last season, they're in a relegation scrap now this season, and they haven't had that much overhaul in terms of playing squad. So yeah, you want to go down with as much momentum as you possibly can, really.
Dave, you alluded to, if we do go down, the expectation will be to come back up. How do you think Stuart Webber and Daniel Farke will deal with that? Because it's going to be a fairly new feeling for them.
Yeah, Norwich fans know intimately, don't they, that bouncing back is a lot easier to say than to do. And, look at the Alex Neil team. They were top in September, and it looked like they were going to be able to do it. But that hangover is really difficult, because usually a relegation squad that comes down is an unhappy squad, isn't it? There's been arguments, there's been incriminations, there've been, angry fans and horrible scenes. But considering that Norwich has spent so much time in the bottom 3, let alone bottom of the table this season, it hasn't felt like that, has it? Like, the atmosphere at Carrow Road is still really positive, or reasonably positive, sorry, in terms of, look at the end of the Leicester game. The celebrations there, that's not normal for a team at the bottom. So I think this is quite a unique situation Norwich are in, because they are trying to do something different in terms of the self-funded model, in terms of, if they pull it off and it's successful, it's going to be so satisfying that they managed to achieve it. But it increases the degree of difficulty hugely. It is, of course, easier when you're Sheffield United and you can spend 50 million when you're promoted. Okay, all right, 20 million if that was in January, once they're pretty much safe. But Norwich just didn't have any financial muscle at all, really, because they spent a lot of it on just getting there, didn't they? On the promotion bonuses and the new contracts. So Stuart Webber is a smart guy, and I'm sure his messaging will be spot on again. It so often is. Daniel's going to be really interesting to see how he copes with it, because this has felt like a real learning curve for him this season. I think he's a very smart guy and will have learnt a lot from this. So I kind of see it as a season where they're going to absolutely nail it and they're going to fly, or there's that horrible feeling that you get to October and November and it's not happening. And I hate the thought, and I hope it doesn't happen. Yeah. But when you think about Alex Neil, how nasty things got then, and how the relationship was so sour towards the end, I hate the thought that could happen to Daniel Farke. And I hope that if things did turn bad, that things wouldn't turn bad and nasty in his direction, because I think people respect him and like him too much. So it's going to be incredibly interesting, but it's really not easy to do. The one thing I would actually say, just thinking about it, is that let's hope that West Brom and Leeds go up. Yeah. Because I think it would be a much, much easier division if they're both out of there.
Yeah, West Brom look very good. Anything to add to that, Jacob?
No, I completely agree. I'd say the Championship this year, it's difficult to again bounce ahead, but hasn't been that great, to be honest. Look at Fulham, for example, the big money players, Mitrovic, Canary, they all underperformed last season, and Scott Parker, for me, isn't the greatest manager in the world. Like Dave said, get West Brom and Leeds out of there, and it's a lot more competitive, but there's a lot more opportunities. to beat weaker teams and what Norwich have currently. And even if Norwich do lose players, a trust in the system and the scouting network that they'll be able to replace them adequately for the Championship and to really give a good push next season.
Before we sign off, Dave, have you got anything to plug? Anything you need to give a push?
Anything to plug?
Your own Pink and podcast, of course.
We're busy boys. The Pink and podcast still going strong. I sort of started out like you guys, really. Started out in bedroom doing podcast in. I know this isn't a bedroom, but,
Big bedroom.
but
Might as well be.
when I was at uni, it was a website called footballfancast.com. It was still going pretty strong these days, and that's when I first was working with the guys at the Pink and to sort of experiment with them having a podcast. And we did, I think it was 8 episodes, and that was, a toe in the water for them. And then they eventually took it on, and that's when I was a bit scunny. So obviously I wasn't involved, but the guys like Chris Lakey, Paddy, Michael Bailey obviously took it all on from there once they got into it. So yeah, I'm really chuffed to be sort of hosting the Pink and podcast again these days. We're working hard on that. Video verdicts on the Pink and YouTube channel are something which are massive for us now. That's something that we really enjoy. But just I suppose pinkand.com is the main thing for us to plug. And don't forget about the print product as well. But everybody seems to talk about newspapers like they're dead these days. But we still sell a reasonable amount, and we're still, the numbers are out there if you can be bothered to go and find them. But newspapers aren't totally dead yet. And we were talking about it as we came in earlier, weren't we? That after that Tottenham game, we produced a 16-page supplement packed full of lovely photos for people to enjoy, and that's a keepsake, isn't it? So there's still that print side of things.
There's definitely something to be said about having the finished product in your hands and flicking through it rather than scrolling on your screen. Jacob, have we got anything to add before we go? Anything on socials this week?
Not really, mate, apart from publishing this, and then obviously the Southampton game where we'll be tweeting away like crazy, hopefully celebrating a win.
Fingers crossed. Dave, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We've had a busy week. It's great that you're taking the time. So yeah, thanks for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week. Please give us a like on Spotify and all the audio platforms. At Cast Canary on Twitter, at CanaryCast on both Facebook and Instagram. Enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks very much.